Hello, welcome back to my channel. Please subscribe to my channel, like my videos, and please check out my channel for other updates about Zeeworld. So the last update about Twist of Fate, Rhea vows to throw Pallavi out of Ranbir's life when she gets married to him, and Siddharth and Prachi finally meet again, and Rhea's friend shows Rhea the video of Siddharth and Prachi talking together at a restaurant, and Rhea shows the video to Ranbir and the Kohli family to gain sympathy. Let's continue. Rhea tells Ranbir that the girl who did wrong with me, you cannot hear anything against her. She says first she snatched my dad and then you. She says then she snatched my husband too and ruined my everything. She says you made yourself busy in the business and asks what shall I do? Where will I go? She says you did not think about me. Rhea tells Ranbir that you are selfish and due to you, my life is getting ruined. She says I thought that I will make a new start, but what did I get? She says I am mad to think that and says my friends are better than you all. She says you people don't see my pain and she asks why am I staying here and says everyone is betraying me, not just Siddharth and Prachi. Rhea says my mom and dad are in coma and you all are in confusion. Prachi is in Siddharth's embrace. Then why am I here in this world? She says I shall not leave and closes the door. They ask her to open the door. Rhea smiles and closes her ears. Grandma says if you do something, then the family will be in problem. Rhea says you are still thinking about family. She asks them to go from there. Vikram and Pallavi insisted that she should listen to them. Rhea says I will commit suicide with the knife kept in my room. Pallavi says I swear, I will make everything fine. Rhea smiles and sees Ranbir coming to the window and knocking on it. She silently opens the window a bit. Ranbir tries to open the window and it opens. She pretends to shed fake tears and threatens to cut her wrist. Pallavi comes to the window and says don't do this. She says I always thought good about you. Rhea says you people made my life as joke. Ranbir asks why are you doing this for someone who is not important for you and says don't take your life. Rhea says why shall I hear you when you don't want to listen to me. She asks Ranbir to hear. Ranbir says keep the knife away just for me. Vikram tries to break the door but he hurt himself. Pallavi says if Rhea commits suicide then we will all go to jail. She says you will all pay for it and tells them about someone's family. Rhea smacks. Pallavi asks her to open the door. Grandma asks her to talk good. Pallavi blames Ranbir and says if you had listened to me that day, then this wouldn't have happened. A flashback is shown. Pallavi asks Ranbir to marry Rhea. Ranbir refuses. Pallavi says don't give a chance to Siddharth and Prachi to ruin your life. Ranbir says I will not give them chance and I want to tell her that my life got better after she went. He says he doesn't want to marry anyone. The flashback ends. Pallavi says you said that Prachi did not mean anything to you and says if you don't want to marry, then that means that you still have a soft corner for Prachi. Ranbir says I don't want to marry as I don't believe on marriage. Rhea opens the door and says I trust marriage and I heard that the girl goes out of the outie. Rhea says you will either lift my dolly or outie after my death. She says either marry me or just let me die. Ranbir is shocked. Siddharth says the truth which I know. You shall also know it, Prachi. Prachi says I don't want to hear it. The way you are turning me against them. She is about to go. Siddharth says why didn't you tell me before that before your marriage with Ranbir, Rhea and Ranbir were about to get married. Prachi says when we came from Bangalore, mommy refused to let me enter and I thought everything is cleared. Siddharth says maybe the question was wrong and says why didn't you tell me that Ranbir left Rhea on the wedding altar and went to marry you against his family's will. Siddharth says the matter was that Ranbir left Rhea and married you. He says Rhea attempted suicide due to this and then Vikram and your dad never met after whatever happened with Rhea. He says your dad started hating you and your mom and dad got separated and says you did not tell me all this. Prachi says I did not know that you were unaware about it. She says when I met you and Rhea after your marriage, I did not want to interfere in your happily married life. Siddharth says happy marriage and says Rhea's behavior was strange always. Siddharth says that day I called you from the hospital and then we went to the hotel room. Then suddenly smoke came into the room and the door was locked. He says then you saw someone. Prachi says then we fell unconscious. Siddharth says we fell on the floor unconscious. He says when we gained consciousness, we were on the bed and Rhea and Ranbir was in front of us. Siddharth says the smoke might have come by mistake, but how can we be found on the bed together? He says it was not accidental and says you tried to explain that it was a misunderstanding, but it was a conspiracy. He says whatever was shown was staged. Siddharth says when you went out of the hotel, I went to the CCTV room. but I couldn't get any evidence, and I saw someone keeping an eye on us. He says it was a plan to show our legitimate relationship as illegitimate. He says the Coley family wanted to get rid of us, and that was why they optioned for this way. He says I was like their son, but not their son, and you were like their daughter-in-law, but not their choice. Siddharth says I handled myself as I came to know as it was a conspiracy. He says you did not meet Ranbir after that, but I met Rhea to clear out the matter. I knew that she was meeting her Bangalore friend and she met her in the hotel lobby. A flashback is shown. Siddharth tells Rhea that he just loves her and he doesn't have any affair with Prachi. Rhea asks him not to pretend. Siddharth says when we went to the hotel room, Rhea says then suddenly the smoke came and you fell unconscious. Rhea tells Siddharth that she didn't want to marry him and she wanted to divorce him, but she dropped the idea when she sees the Coleys as she wanted to stay with them. Siddharth says, what about your sister? Rhea says she is my enemy and snatched my everything from me, but she cannot snatch my destiny. She says Pallavi aunt liked me from the start and she wanted me to become her daughter-in-law. Rhea says we are about to get married, but Prachi blackmailed Ranbir and he left me on the wedding altar to marry Prachi. She says, didn't you notice why Pallavi aunt used to scold Prachi and she used to praise me? She says I was her choice and she wanted me to marry Ranbir. Rhea says nobody used to like Prachi, and one day Pallavi auntie talked to us and made a plan to get rid of Prachi. She says Vikram and Ranbir were there too. She says that lady was Pallavi auntie. She got the gas leaked and then Ranbir made you both lie down on the bed, and then you know what happened next. The flashback ends. Prachi says Prachi's pain was genuine and it was not any drama. Siddharth says Rhea said it was a drama. The flashback shows again. Rhea says that it was a plan and they pretend as if they got the pain of their life. She says Ranbir said all those things so that Prachi can feel the pain. She says else Prachi wouldn't have left the house. Rhea says Pallavi auntie wanted Ranbir and I to marry as we love each other. She says we used to hate you too and even you have to leave the house. She asks him to start a life again and asks if he will sign on the divorce papers or he will see Ranbir and her together. The flashback ends. Siddharth says then I understood why Rhea behaved sweetly when Ranbir was around. He says I saw them closer, but I was blinded by Rhea's love just like you. Rhea threatens to commit suicide and keeps the knife on her wrist. Pallavi and Vikram ask her not to do this. Ranbir tries to stop her. Rhea says don't you dare say anything. Grandma says you are stubborn and taking advantage of our goodness. Rhea gets angry. Pallavi says don't say anything. Vikram asks her to be quiet. Rhea asks Grandma to stay away and says I cannot be alone, and says if I stay alone, then people's thought will be proved right, that Prachi and Siddharth betrayed us and left. Grandma says who says this? Rhea says my friend says. Grandma says leave such friends. Rhea says shall I die? She tells Ranbir that he kept Prachi in his heart, but she loves Siddharth and not you. She says Prachi is living with Siddharth and you are living in her memories. Rhea asks what shall I do? She says you don't want me to move on and not letting me to move on. She says why are you stopping me to live the life? She says I am not killing myself. You are forcing me to die. Ranbir tries to snatch the knife from her hand and says we will make them realize that they cannot ruin our lives and says we will be happy without them. Rhea says we will not do what society asks us to do if he will not marry me. She says I know you will not marry me and you want to give a strong message to Prachi and Siddharth. She says I will not change my decision and I will die. Ranbir snatches the knife from her hand and throws it away. She picks it again. Ranbir bends down on his knees and proposes to Rhea for marriage. Rhea drops the knife and says yes, I will marry you. She holds his hand and hugs him. Pallavi and Vikram were happy. Grandma is shocked. Ranbir says make the arrangement for the marriage and he goes. Grandma says Ranbir, you. Ranbir goes out while a sad song plays in the background. Rhea says I am sorry daddy. Pallavi says it is okay. Vikram says we want everything to be fine. Rhea says you are a good parent. Thanks for saving me. Grandma goes to talk to Ranbir. Prachi refuses to believe Siddharth and says Rhea lied to you. Siddharth says Pallavi liked Rhea always and Rhea loved Ranbir and that is why they made the plan to send us out from their lives. Siddharth says I came to talk to you but Sushma auntie stopped me. He says then I went to Bangalore and then I tried to call you but it was changed. He says I couldn't tell you that Ranbir was not like he appears. Prachi says Rhea lied to you and says that the incident was unfortunate and Ranbir couldn't think of this even in his dreams. She says if you will do this to separate from me. Prachi says I might agree that Pallavi auntie might team up with Rhea, but Ranbir cannot do this. She says his heart was broken and I felt his pain in his eyes. She says my Ranbir cannot do this. Siddharth says we can talk about Rhea. He asks, didn't you feel that Rhea has Ranbir in her heart? Prachi recalls the incident when she sees Rhea with Ranbir. She says it might be in Rhea's eyes and not in Ranbir's eyes. Siddharth says forget that you love Ranbir, then you will understand. Prachi says I will not hear anything against Ranbir. She says I love him still and he is my husband still. Prachi says Ranbir loves me equally and he will tell this himself. She says I am giving him time, as my mother says that time heals everything. She says I know that everything will be fine between us. Siddharth asks Prachi to sit. Prachi says I am unwell and asks him to go. She asks the hotel staff lady to take her to her room. Grandma comes to Ranbir and says don't do this marriage. She says I did not tell you anything and says Prachi and you. He says I don't want to talk about her. Grandma says how can you marry her, as she threatened to commit suicide. She says this is blackmailing. How can you be happy with Rhea? Ranbir says he is marrying Rhea for his parents' happiness. Grandma asks what about your own happiness? He says it doesn't matter. I did everything with my choice. What did I get? Grandma says happiness was with you, but you misunderstood her. Ranbir says this is Prachi's speciality and says we cannot accept what she has done and says maybe it is her magic and so on. Grandma says whatever you have seen was not right. Ranbir says forget it and says that was betrayal and this is reality. He says she shall be happy and I cannot see you sad. Grandma thinks that I wish I could do something for you and says I will not agree that Prachi has betrayed you. Sushma talks on the call and says she is in Bangalore. Prachi asks the hotel staff member to take her to her mother's room. Prachi runs to the bathroom. The staff member asks if she should call the doctor and tells her about the medicine box. Prachi asks where is it. The staff member says that it is in the drawer. Prachi says she is fine and asks her to go. The staff member goes. Rhea comes to her room happily and recalls Ranbir's proposal. Rhea thinks I am getting married to the love of my life and says she is getting married to Ranbir. It is her dream to become Mrs. Ranbir Kohli. She asks if it is dream and dances. Pallavi comes there and says it is okay. She says I know you are very happy and you have all the right to deserve this happiness. You have sacrificed so much. Pallavi says I am very happy for you and says everything is happening as I wanted many years ago and says life is starting before Prachi had come in our lives. She says I called a priest and he said that tomorrow's Mahurat is good and then after a month, she says the marriage would happen tomorrow. Rhea recalls talking to the priest and bribing him on the call to tell them that Mahurat date is tomorrow. The priest says that there is no Mahurat tomorrow. Rhea asks him to tell Pallavi that Mahurat is good and says he will get double reward. The priest says I will never lie. Rhea says Lakshmi Mata is coming in your house and asks him to tell Pallavi that tomorrow is the best day. Pallavi says I called the designer and asked her to select her wedding dress. Rhea says thank you so much. You always support me and taking care of me, but I emotionally hurt you. She emotionally blackmails Pallavi. Pallavi says I can understand. Rhea says you have taken care of me like your daughter, though my own mother doesn't want my happiness. She says you are my true mother and says we would have a mother and daughter relationship between us. Pallavi says it works perfectly and says you are already my daughter and says you and Ranbir's marriage is necessary. Pallavi says I am happy for you both. She says I shall go and make the announcement of the marriage and I shall tell everyone that Ranbir is marrying with the girl of my choice. She says she will tell Siddharth and then Prachi will know eventually. She says she will tell them that her children will be happy always after marriage. She goes to call Siddharth. Rhea gets worried. Thank you for watching my videos. Please don't forget to like it, share it and please subscribe to my channel for more updates. Thank you.